Good morning. This is the June 15th, 2023 meeting of the Syracuse Regional Board of Review. This hearing is being held via video conference call WebEx at the following location: Hughes State Office Building, 333 East Washington Street, Main Hearing Room, first floor, Syracuse, New York, 13202. The time is 9:39 a.m. and this hearing is officially open. Members of the board are to my far left, Gail Swistak, to my left, Jeffrey Hinderleiter, and to my right, James Burton. My name is Andrew Garlock, Chairman. From the Department of State is Thomas DiTullio. We will now hear the scheduled petitions. When you speak, please address the board and give your name, title, and legal address so that our court reporter can have all of the information requested. We may have to stop from time to time to consult with our technical staff. In making comments to the board, please provide a descriptive narrative on matters referring to your exhibits to enable the court reporter to enter these into the record. For our first hearing, this hearing is in the matter of Tompkins County ERC, petition number 2023-0248. We have the applicant here present the.
Yes, I just typically will do the initial presentation.
Who is it that's presenting? Mr. Stigley.
Mike Stigley. Hoping I can hear us.
He's right here. Mike, can you hear us?
I can. Good morning.
Morning.
Is it okay to proceed, or do you want me to?
Please do, Mike.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Michael Stigley. I'm the director at the Department of Emergency Response in Tompkins County, New York. The address here is 92 Brown Road, Ithaca, New York, 14850. I'm excited and grateful to have a few minutes to speak to the board this morning to talk about a shared vision, a vision that really began before my tenure about 2 years ago, where a public sector and private sector had a concept of a shared service to combine a backup center for our individual 911 centers. Cornell University operates its own 911 center, and Tompkins County 911 Center provides consolidated dispatch for all the emergency services in Tompkins County, New York. So it seemed logical at the time to pair with the only other 911 center in the county to see if we could create an opportunity to share space again for a consolidated backup center. The location that we're going to be talking about today was identified. It was a lengthy process, but it was identified with a group of stakeholders to try to find the ideal location. This site was chosen primarily because it has line of sight with one of our 911 towers that's positioned at the Ithaca College. And we knew that we needed to have a tower site, have line of sight with wherever we decided we were going to have our backup center. Additionally, we needed to ensure that Verizon had the ability to bring in some the 911 lines for both Cornell and for Tompkins County. Again, since we both operate 911 centers, it was really important to find a location where the infrastructure could be supported. So the location that we're talking about today met both of those requirements. It is already part of the Cornell, so that made it a little bit easier to work through some of the details. But we are excited about this partnership and the location that we've chosen, and it seems like it's the most ideal location for this project. Thank you.
Would you like to continue?
No, that's it, unless there's any questions for me.
Okay. Anybody else that would like to present?
I would like to, Mike Nikdovich, Building Code Program Manager for Cornell University. And since Cornell is partially involved in this project, I was asked to speak regarding the code aspects of this. And that's a good introduction because these folks worked very, very hard to find a location. And what they looked for and understood was, oh, we needed an office space. And not, you know, not being a code geek, let's put it best this way. I was with the city, I think, for 31 years building division. So, and then went to Cornell. Some of the subtleties in the code weren't addressed. In particular, what happened was they needed a secure entrance. Since Cornell owns the facility and county will be using it, it came to Cornell to look at doing the entrance. A lintel was called for, went to our engineering. Our engineer saw, whoops, wait a minute, this is an emergency call center. That means it's risk category 4. We've got to go 150% of loads. Whereas previously the office space, which they thought office to office would be no big deal. You know, engineer comes to me, I said, uh-oh, we got a problem. We need to talk to the county. And basically we need to meet per the existing building code to extend 150% of the standard wind, snow, and seismic loads. So to deal with that, what we're going to do is structurally make the building independent. And per building code section 1604.5.1, it allows that if you make it structurally independent, not a separate building, so no firewall required, structural independence, that can be regulated separately. So we've got a small area that has a common 12-inch block wall, 8-inch exterior wall. So that space is fairly robust, where structurally separating it from the rest of the plaza. So failure at the rest of the plaza won't structurally affect this office space. We're making the emergency power completely independent of the existing building. So running it underground, separate supply, that kind of thing. We're going to fully sprinkler this portion of the building. And I know that doesn't address structural stability under adverse conditions, but the redundancy does in some ways address that. You know, a hurricane is not going to come this far inland. It will be a tornado. And we're talking about 180 mile an hour winds at 150% of design loads. So we're talking something significant. And this structure has been there since the 70s. Like to say we don't get earthquakes in this area, but we had one in Buffalo not that long ago. And I'm old, so I forget, you know, last 20 years, we had one in Virginia that shook this area. It survived it. And I know that doesn't mean it complies with code, but it did survive. So we have history that says structurally it's handled the snow, wind, and seismic loads in the area for that period of time. Like I said, we're gonna structurally separate. We're gonna fully sprinkler. We're gonna make it, you know, power supply, independent power supply with backup power. I think reasonably that's about the best we can do. Otherwise, we're talking about building a new building, and these guys need it quickly. The greatest threat for maintained services, believe it or not, these days is changes in technology. Updating software, updating hardware in order to deal with, first of all, it became cell phone use. Now it's becoming Wi-Fi use. That's really what takes the centers down. So by having this backup center, they can deploy to the backup center and upgrade the primary center and vice versa. Any questions, gentlemen? Ma'am?
I have a question.
Hey, this is the reporter. Who's speaking right now at the
This
podium?
is Mike Nikodovich, Building Code Program Manager for Cornell University. Addresses Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, 14850.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Absolutely. If you could have spelled that, I would have been amazed. It's N as in Nancy, IECHWIADOWICZ. I should have warned you.
WICZ.
Yeah, cat, zebra,
Your first name again?
Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Normally I would have given you my card to solve that, but you're welcome.
Okay, do we have questions on the board?
Yeah, I have a question for the county representative. You still with us, Mike?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are you seeking for this facility, UL 827 certification?
I don't think I have the expertise to answer that. I'd have to,
I'm sorry, I can't hear your
I'm
response.
sorry, I don't know if I really have the answer for that immediately, so I'd have to, could you repeat the question and so I can find out the details?
Yes, so there's a UL standard that provides a certification, they used to call it listing, that contains additional requirements for emergency communication centers. And the purpose is really to ensure that you've got, redundant power supplies, that you have physical barriers, that nobody could just drive a truck into the building and breach the entrance and things of that nature. So I'm interested in understanding whether or not you intend to seek UL certification for this backup center, as it will, according to Cornell, this may serve as the primary emergency communication center when the other one is taken down for service.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an immediate answer for that. I don't really have that level of expertise. If there's somebody else from the team that could answer it, I'd certainly like to yield to them, but we will have redundancies at both locations. I mean, the period of time that we believe that will be our primary location would be just for the period of time that we need to renovate our Brown Road location. And then outside of that, it would really only be used in the event that we had a situation here where, we couldn't operate.
We are designing to that standard. I can't tell you for sure whether we're seeking the UL certification, but I know the engineers at Cornell are designing for that standard, and Cornell is handling that design on behalf of the county. That's why the backup power, it has been isolated and so on, and indeed, that's the standard that the backup power will be designed or is being designed to. And we're not fully into design because we were waiting for this hearing to see if even we can go forward with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Jim?
No.
Jeff, do you have any questions?
Just to confirm, it looks like you're going to be installing vertical expansion joints to
Correct.
isolate the building structurally.
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
The rest of the framing internally appears to be independent from your drawings.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Gail, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. We have the fire code official here.
Sorry, may I? This is in the town of Ithaca. So in the town of Ithaca, they are the fire code official and the building official. The town typically takes a neutral stance, and I believe you checked in with them, and they once again took a neutral stance.
Right, and I have a document about to read it.
Okay.
Get to it.
I'm here from the Ithaca Fire Department.
That would be Gail, correct?
It's Jillian Haynes
Jillian,
Sharp.
I'm sorry, Jillian.
That's okay.
My apologies.
I go by Jill often.
You go ahead, please.
I'm Jillian Haynes Sharp, Fire Marshal, Assistant Chief for the City of Ithaca Fire Department. And while we don't have jurisdiction in the town for code enforcement, we do respond to the town for fire protection. And we have no concerns about this variance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And this is, Maureen, this is Tom DeToya, Department of State. The code official responsible would be Marty Mosley. And I don't know if Marty's on our line right now. But he had previously sent his written comments, which were included in emails that were sent along with our packets. which means he has no comments either for or against the work that the city's doing. Other than that, whatever the board decides is provided to him, and they can make sure whatever requirements are provided.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? I don't have any additional questions, so with that, we will go into a short recess. We're gonna go off the record and deliberate, and then we'll ask you to leave the room and then bring you back shortly.
We're on the record. We're on the record.
Are we unmuted?
We're unmuted. Maureen, we're on the record.
We're on the record.
Maureen?
Can you hear me?
Maureen, we're on the record.
I'm on the record.
Good, thank you. We're gonna go back into the meeting in the matter of petition number 2023-0248. Do I have a motion?
You do. Petition 2023-0248 pertains to a variance seeking relief for a proposed alternative communications center for Tompkins County Department of Emergency Response, where the existing building is approximately, I make the following motion. What I just said, you want me to reread it?
Yes.
Okay, I make the following motion. Petition 2023-0248 pertains to a variance seeking relief for a proposed alternative communications center for Tompkins County Department of Emergency Response, where the existing building is approximately 112,000 square feet of construction type 2B, 1 story in height, located at East Hill Plaza, 315 to 369 Pine Tree Road, Suite 180, Town of Ithaca, County of Tompkins, New York State. The public notice was published in the New York State Register's May 24th, 2022 issue. The petitioner is seeking relief from 19 NYCRR Part 1227, the existing building code of New York State, section 1006.2, which states, where a change of occupancy results in a structure being assigned to a higher risk category, the structure shall satisfy the requirements of section 1608, 1609 of the Building Code of New York State for the new risk category. And 19 NYCRR Part 1227, the existing Building Code of New York State, section 1006.3, which states, where a change of occupancy results in a building being assigned to a higher risk category, the building shall satisfy the requirements of section 1613 of the Building Code of New York State for the new risk category using full seismic forces. Based on the testimony and documentation presented, the board makes the following findings of fact. 1. Subject petition pertains to an alternative communications center for Tompkins County Department of Emergency Response, located in the East Hill Plaza at 361 Pine Tree Road, Town of Ithaca, County of Tompkins, New York State. 2. The petitioner states that the building is of mixed use, retail, and office occupancies, that the building was constructed in 1970 as a retail mall, approximately 112,000 square feet, 1 story in height. The subject space is 1 story in height, 1,314 square feet in size, located in the northeast corner of the building. 3. The subject building's construction type is properly classified per the 2020 Building Code of New York State, Part 1221, Section 602.2, as Type 2B non-combustible unprotected construction. 4. The subject building's occupancies are properly classified per 2020 Building Code of New York State, Part 1221, Section 304.1 as B Business Communication Center and Section 309.1 Mercantile M Retail Stores. 5. The petitioner states the change of occupancy of the business office space to an emergency communication center initiated the change of risk category from type 2 to type 4 for structural analysis of the existing building structure. 6, the increase in snow load, wind load, and seismic resistance safety factors due to the new category 4 status revealed that the existing structure is deficient structurally. 7, The petitioner states that the building space is being leased from Cornell University and that extensive structural upgrades to the space would be an excessive economic burden and would impose an additional delay for completion. 8, the county's alternative emergency response communication center will share space with Cornell University Public Safety Alternative Communications Center, allowing for close cooperation between the university and county emergency management personnel. 9, the petitioner states that the location is optimal, fiber optic communication lines are present, the site provides a, quote, line of sight, quote, to the Tompkins County radio tower and Verizon 16 CAMA trunks, 911, and 2 ALI lookup circuits essential to communications. 10, the petitioner proposes structurally separating the 2 perimeter sides that adjoin the building, thus allowing the building to perform as 2 independent structures. 11, the petitioner states that the new space is to be protected by a sprinkler system, which is not required. 12, the petitioner states that the existing space's perimeter consists of one 12-inch concrete masonry wall and the other remaining 3 walls, 8-inch concrete masonry walls. The owner couldn't identify if the concrete masonry walls were reinforced or not. 13, the petitioner's code compliance officer states they are voluntarily designing the structure in accordance with standard UL 827. 14, the representative from the city fire department spoke and does not oppose the granting of this variance. 15, the local code official has been consulted in this matter and neither supports nor opposes the granting of the variance under Part 1205. In view of the above findings, testimony, and documentation presented before it, the board finds that strict compliance with the code would entail practical difficulties, unnecessary hardship, or would otherwise be unwarranted because such would create an excessive and unreasonable economic burden, would inhibit achievement in some other important public policy, or would be unnecessary in light of alternatives which, without a loss in the level of safety, achieve the intended objective of the code. Wherefore, it is determined that the application for a variance from 19 NYCRR Part 1227, the existing building code in New York State, sections 1006.2 and section 1006.3, be and is hereby granted with the following conditions. 1, that petitioner adds a code-compliant automatic fire sprinkler system and shall not be a limited area sprinkler system. 2, that the structural independence and improvements will be completed as identified in Exhibit C. The board finds that the granting of this variance will not substantially adversely affect the Uniform Code's provisions for health, safety, and security. I so move.
Okay, one revision just in the beginning, the date, the New York State Register was, I believe, May 24th, 2023.
This thing.
Discussion. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll pull the board. Mr. Berg,
Aye.
Ms. Swistak,
Aye.
Mr. Hinterleiter.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. 4 ayes, no nays. Petition is granted. Also, this decision is limited to specific building and application before it as contained within the petition and should not be interpreted to give implied approval of any general plans or specifications presented in support of this application. Hearing is now concluded.
Thank you very much.
This case is now concluded. Hearing is still open.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to go to our second case. This hearing is in the matter of Colleen Welsh, petition number 2023-0261. Do we have the applicant here to make a presentation?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Please, yes, please say your name and address for the court reporter.
My name is Colleen Welch. My residence is 1605 Holland Ave, Utica, New York.
Okay. You want to talk about your case and what you're looking for?
Sure. The property at 6007 and 1609 Holland Ave, I'm looking for relief from New York State Multiple Residence Law, Article 3, Section 31, for the inside cellar stairs. The fire door option is not, well, it inhibits the the blocking of the staircase, or it can't fully open, so it creates a hazard in itself where it is, or where the location would be. We've tried to install it, but it blocks the other tenant and blocks the staircase. And the other would be relief from New York State Multiple Residence Law, Article 3, Section 30, the cellar ceiling, due to the fact that it's cost prohibitive. I've looked into sprinkler system. It would be $12,000 to bring the water across the street. The multiple pipes, electrical access and everything there would be cause a great harm for any issues. We've had to install additional pipes and just access to any problems that we'd have with the furnace.
Okay. Is that all? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, it's pretty much it. It's the two issues that we have a problem with.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Burton?
I have no questions for this here.
Okay. Ms. Swistak?
No.
Mr. Hinderleiter?
Just one, looking at the pictures you provided, so right now, the hallway where the basement door would go, that hallway is open right to the basement.
It's to a second landing, which there's another door and there's another opening, which would also prohibit it couldn't swing inward, and to swing outward, it would block the exit door.
So as it stands, if you're in that stairwell, you have access to the basement unobstructed, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
we've taken the molding off to put the door in, and we just can't find an option. It can't swing towards the basement because of the slope of the staircase above it. And to swing in, it would block the tenant or the staircase for the upstairs. And the lower landing equally as hazardous. It can't swing into the wall, and to swing out blocks the exit door.
Do you have a question?
I do have a question for this applicant. Ms. Welsh, you're proposing to install single station smoke alarms as one of the alternatives to compliance, is that correct?
I don't believe I put that on there. No, it was mentioned to me that heat sensors on the door and self-closing hinges, and possibly smoke detectors that were hardwired were all other options.
Okay. Are you willing to install smoke detecting devices?
Yes,
Are you willing to install smoke detecting devices that are interconnected to one another? So alarm on one device would notify occupants throughout the building.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Being no other questions, the board is going to go into deliberation, discuss the case. We're going to ask everybody not with the board or the state to leave the room. Go off the record.
Thank you.
We're on the record.
We're gonna reopen petition number 2023-0261. Do I have a motion?
Yes. I make the following motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Upon the application of Colleen Welch filed pursuant to 19 NYCRR 1205 on May 10th, 2023, and upon all other papers in this matter, the department makes the following determination. The petition pertains to a wood frame multi-dwelling, 2 stories in height, with an occupied attic containing 3 dwelling units located at 1607 through 1609 Holland Ave, City of Utica, County of Oneida, State of New York. Relief is requested from Chapter 61B of the Consolidated Laws of New York, Multiple Residential Law, Article 3, Section 30, cellar ceilings, which states that in every such dwelling, 3 stories or more in height, the ceiling of the cellar or of the lowest story, if there be no cellar, shall be fire retardant or be equipped with a sprinkler system unless such ceiling has already been plastered to the satisfaction of the department. The petitioner requests relief from Chapter 61B of the Consolidated Laws of New York, Multiple Residential Law, Article 3, Section 31, inside cellar stairs. Every stair leading from the cellar to the floor above in all old multi-dwellings shall be enclosed with fire retardant partitions and shall be equipped with a fire retardant self-closing door located as the department may approve. Findings and facts. 1, the building that is subject to the petition is properly classified under Chapter 61B of the Consolidated Laws of New York, Multiple Residential Law, Article 1, Section 433, as a multiple dwelling. Number 2, the subject building is required to conform to the provisions of Article 3 of the Multiple Residential Law as provided in Section 25, in that it existed on or before July 1st, 1952, or was converted to a multiple dwelling after July 1st, 1952, and is not a hotel or similar dwelling subject to Article 4 of the Multiple Residential Law. Number 3, the building that is subject to the petition is 3 stories, wood frame, approximately 3,902 square feet in area, with an apartment on the first floor, an apartment on each of the second and third floor attic. The building was constructed in or about 1930 as a 2-family residence that was later converted to a 3-unit apartment building. Number 4, the petitioner states that the installation of the required fire-rated gypsum board on the basement ceiling would be physically impracticable due to the presence of ductwork, plumbing pipes, and electrical wire obstructions. Number 5, the petitioner states that the required basement door at the first floor is physically impractical due to the inability of the door to properly operate. The door swing is obstructed by the slope of the stairs above the door location. The door swing would be impeded at the first floor corridor and cannot swing into the stairway leading to the basement for the same obstruction. Number 6, the local code official has been consulted in the matter and does not support the granting of the variance, Part 1205. Number 7, the building shall otherwise comply with all other local and state building codes and local ordinances. In conclusion, the proposed variance will not substantially adversely affect the code's provisions for health, safety, and security. Strict compliance with the provisions of the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code would entail practical difficulties, economic hardship, or would otherwise be unwarranted because such would be physically or legally impractical, would be unnecessary in light of alternatives which, without a loss in the level of safety, achieve the intended objective of the code. Wherefore, it's determined that the application for the variance from Chapter 61B of the Consolidated Laws of New York, Multiple Residential Law, Article 3, Section 30 and 31, be and is hereby granted with the following condition. Condition 1, that 2 single-station smoke alarm devices be provided in the cellar, that the single-station smoke alarm be provided on each landing of the front and rear exit stairs, that a single-station heat alarm be provided on the occupied side of one entrance door to the 3 dwelling units, and that all the above noted smoke and heat alarms shall be interconnected together. I so move.
Okay, I have a motion. I would like to propose an amendment to revision to finding of fact number 6. The local code official has been consulted in this matter and does not oppose the granting of the variance under part 1205. Is that okay? Okay, do I have a second?
Second that motion with the amendment.
I'll pull the board. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Hinderleiter,
Aye.
Ms. Swistak,
Aye.
chair votes aye, 4 ayes, no nays. Petition is granted. Please note, the decision is limited to the specific building and application before it as contained within the petition. It should not be interpreted to give applied approval of any general plans or specifications presented in support of this application. This case is closed. We will move on to our third hearing. This hearing is in the matter of Cornell University, petition number 2023-0263. We have the applicant here to discuss the project.
My name is Thomas King. I'm the Director of Facilities for the College of Engineering at Cornell University. My address is Word Center, Cornell University.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. Is this
Oh.
Thomas King?
Thomas King, yes.
Thank you.
Director of Facilities for the College of Engineering at Cornell University. Address Ward Center, Cornell University, 14853, New York. Yeah, so Duffield Hall is a major research facility in the College of Engineering at Cornell University. And
Mr. King, will you please speak up?
I think on a chair, put the chair closer to.
okay, the Duffield Hall is a major research building at the College of Engineering at Cornell University. And it was built under previous code to handle some of our highest level of research at the college. The code has changed, and so presently we are not in compliance with several parts of the code, as you can see from our application. And we have many things in the facility that are in the lines of the high level research that we do. We have toxic gas monitoring systems.
I'm sorry, Mr. King, I cannot hear you.
Okay, go right there. Can you hear me now? Is this on? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. The facility has several features which make it, help us do our research there. It's that we have a toxic gas monitoring system. We have a isolated chemical transport pathway that all of our chemicals that are transported through the facility go through this chemical transport pathway. So nothing is transported through the atrium of the facility. It's connected to our Phillips Hall building, and they're considered one building now. And so this whole application is about separating the buildings from a code perspective to allow us to continue to do the research that we need to do in Duffield Hall, because it is by itself, looking at it, a fully sprinklered facility. When you look at the entire building together with Phillips, then we get into the issue of not being fully sprinklered, because Phillips building was built way before Duffield. It was not sprinklered at the time. Our previous work with the city, we had agreed to sprinkler it. For every renovation we did within Phillips, we would sprinkler that area. 20 years later, we've done about 30% of the building. So here we are with our application, and I'll turn it over to Chris from SWBR, who is our code consultant, to go into more detail about our application and some of the things we have proposed with mitigations. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Chris John. That is J, A as in Apple, H, N as in Nancy. I am with SWBR. Our address is 387 East Main Street, Rochester, New York, 14604. As Tom mentioned, we were providing assistance in code analysis and in preparing the variance. And really, it boils down to this. There's a lot of intense but very important research going on in Duffield Hall. And Duffield Hall, when it was built, was designed with a high level of safety based on that activity. Our current code designations for the building, per the C of O, it's 4 stories. There's actually 3 floors of research. The 4th floor is a mechanical space, and then a partial basement below. It's type 1 construction, type 1B to be specific. Duffield, as it's known to Cornell, is fully sprinklered in and of itself. It's part of what are now 3 contiguous buildings that are knitted together by this atrium space. Legally, Upson, which is to the south, is separated by a previous variance. However, Phillips Hall is legally considered part of the Duffield Hall building, if you will, even though Duffield has a separate construction type and a separate certificate of occupancy. Because there's not a firewall as the code defines it, they are legally lumped together. And where this comes to play out is in the ability to designate control areas for chemical management. So we're looking at the atrium as providing an equivalent amount of protection as a firewall would in separating Phillips Hall proper from the research stories, the 4 stories or 3 stories of research part of Duffield. The atrium itself is legally a part of Duffield, or is actually constructed at the same time. The atrium itself is structurally independent from Phillips. It does contain the smoke evacuation that we would expect in an atrium. The atrium is separated from Phillips and from the multi-story part of Duffield. It actually has a 2-hour separation between the atrium proper and the walls of Phillips and what we call kind of that Duffield Hall, right? In addition to that, there's a racetrack corridor configuration on the multi-story portion of Duffield. The corridor wall inboard of the atrium wall also contains a 1-hour rating. So the research spaces in Duffield are separated from the atrium by the 1 hour corridor wall and then again by the 2 hour atrium wall. There is some chemical storage which is constructed in Phillips, and there's a completely independent chemical transport route that links that via a pathway in the basement to Duffield. So the chemicals that are stored in Phillips would be transported along this route. The chemical itself rides to the basement in what we colloquially call a material lift. The proper term is what? It's a reciprocating conveyance system.
Reciprocating vertical conveyance.
Reciprocating vertical conveyance. But it's a material lift, material only. The personnel would put the chemicals in that lift. The lift goes down. The personnel use a stair, which is separated from the egress stair above it, currently by 2 hour construction. And then the chemicals and the personnel go through the chemical transport route to an interior elevator in Duffield. They rise back up, the chemicals and the personnel, and the chemicals then are transported to the labs via an interior corridor. So this was illustrated as part of our exhibits to the application. But essentially what it means is that the general public that occupy the atrium are never crossing paths with any of the chemicals as they travel between Phillips and Duffield. The chemical transport route itself meets the requirements of, it's similar to a hazardous production material. We call it hazardous research material though. And this really gets into some of the nuance of the H5 portion of the occupancy, where the code is really written around semiconductor production. This is semiconductor research. So yes, there are some of the same hazards, but not at the same scale that you would expect in a full semiconductor production facility. But again, all of that is transported and distributed to the labs completely independent of the atrium, and in fact, independent of the exit corridors within Duffield. All of that was designed in when the building was constructed. So there was a mindset that this building was going to achieve a high level of safety as best as they could interpret the codes in force at the time. So what we're asking for today is to use this atrium, which is not research space, and we're committed to it never being occupied or infilled for any research space, as the separation from what is considered Duffield Hall and Phillips Hall as if they are two separate buildings. This enables the university within Duffield Hall to come into compliance with their maximum allowable quantities of chemicals by delineating a proper number of control areas. And really that's necessary to continue the ongoing research that's happening in the building.
Any questions from the board members?
Yeah, I have some questions for you, Chris. The first one is really a clarification. So it's our understanding that Phillips is type 2. So when you combine two buildings with two different construction types, the building is then regulated by the least fire resistant construction classification. Would agree with that?
That's an interesting observation. The certificate of occupancy that was issued granted Duffield 1B type construction. And I should say too, the reason why Phillips is technically 2B, while the building itself is mostly concrete frame, poured in place concrete deck that we would typically see with type 1 construction, there is a lecture hall space that's the floor above is supported by unprotected steel. And it's in that location where Phillips is then relegated down to type 2 construction. The balance of Phillips is type 1. Duffield itself is type 1. So in the certificate of occupancy, for whatever reason, I was born, but I wasn't around at the time, was issued as type 1B.
So for purposes of this discussion, for the record that we're creating, any portion of the structure that doesn't meet the requirements for our construction type is then regulated per the construction classification that exists. So Phillips has components that are type 2. Phillips is type 2. Phillips is adjoined with the atrium and or the Duffield Hall proper. Then the entire contiguous structure would be regulated as a type 2 structure.
Yeah.
You want to speak to that,
Yes.
sir? Okay.
Please identify yourself.
Mike Nikodovich, sorry, Maureen, you're gonna have to type that last name again. Building Code Program Manager for Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, 14850. You're absolutely correct, Mr. Burton, that it is a type 2B structure. At the time, and I was with the city at that time, although not my primary responsibility as project, under the previous code, it could be regulated by fire area. So the addition was issued a certificate of occupancy because Duffield was built as an addition to Phillips, was issued a certificate of occupancy that states it's 1B construction. Now, you know, to have separate structures, we need a firewall. So indeed, Phillips Duffield is one. The lowest type of construction applies. If you look at the entire building is properly classified as 2B construction. Absolutely correct.
Thank you. Okay. The smoke evacuation system, does the smoke evacuation system, is the smoke evacuation system designed to accommodate the volume of space on the occupied side of Field Hall out of the atrium that doesn't currently have improved water curtain?
I'm not sure I follow. So
We'll get back to that.
are you talking about,
Probably.
is it the cafe or is it the sprinklers that we identified were absent on one side of the glass of the first floor of Duffield?
So the provisions for fire resistance ratings separating an atrium from occupied space on the levels and the water curtains required opening protectives are exempt where those spaces are protected by a smoke evacuation system. So you would take the smoke evacuation system that's designed for, say, 400,000 cubic feet, and you would design it to accommodate 500,000 cubic feet, as an example, to cover those areas. So that's one of the options that you have as design.
Mike Nikodovich, Building Code Program Manager, Cornell University, once again. At the atrium barriers, that separation is continuous. We found a few locations where the water curtain was lacking on the glass on the Duffield side. That will be corrected. So we do have a continuous 2-hour separation at Phillips as well as Duffield. The smoke exhaust system is designed to deal with the entire volume within that 2-hour separation. So the atrium only. So the adjoining spaces are separated and not included in that smoke evacuation system. That is correct.
Thank you very much. Okay. Like to talk a bit about hazardous protection materials. The code does not recognize the term hazardous research materials. It's a clever way of recognizing that this is an academic facility, but I can tell you that when we dealt with the variances required for the microelectronics facilities at University of Albany, which have, as you probably know, incubator sites for semiconductor research. Very, very similar to what you're doing here. They're doing it at an academic level. They lease out some of the spaces, but you know, the point is that the risks associated with H5 exist whether they're little or big. So H5 is H5 is H5. Okay, so it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
Agreed.
That's why I'm in this predicament.
Yes.
So just, you know, for the record,
Absolutely.
hazardous research materials is not a term recognized by the code. Also like to talk about the quantities. And maybe this is a good time to get this on record, and I certainly don't mean to be negative in any way, but from the time that this matter was published in the state register, between then and today, Phillips underwent a fire safety inspection, which failed. One of the things that was recognized there is that the code enforcement official, fire official rather, doesn't know what the quantities are of different classes of hazardous production materials and chemistry and H4 and H2 as well. I had asked the state whether or not we had on record of Form 209U. They were unable to respond to that, so I'm guessing that either one exists that has not yet been submitted to the local fire officials, or one does not exist. So just trying to get some clarifications on the record here. You presented a tremendous amount of information. The other thing I'd like to say is that the work that you intend to perform, Phillips, has not yet been defined, at least it's not defined in this petition. So whatever you have planned has not been presented to the board. If you go through the actual New York State petition for a variance, you'll see a list of criteria required to be submitted in support of an application for a variance. Just want to go on record as saying that without a more thorough understanding of nature and extent of the proposed work, it's difficult for the board to recognize what we're being asked to grant relief from. It's like a blank room and we don't know what's in there. Or several rooms, if you will.
Mike Nikodovich, Building Code Program Manager once again, and perhaps the folks from College of Engineering can speak better to this. There is a schematic design going on as we speak for Phillips Hall that will actually create an addition and modify the spaces. So this variance will inform what can happen with that design, obviously. That's why the intent to sprinkler Phillips fully within 5 years is on the table as mitigation, and that would happen as part of this renovation, rehabilitation of Phillips and addition. And in that sense, it's very important to get the variance, not only for the Duffield side, but also for the Phillips side, that would allow the level of research that is hoped to be able to be conducted when the building is redone. And indeed, back when this building was built under the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, we didn't have the provisions of Chapter 38 nor Chapter 38, Higher Education Lab regulations, and Chapter 27, the regulations for H5, and as you said, hazardous production facilities, which includes research facilities. And as you know, that is now retroactive. So indeed, we tried to do the best at the time. And like I said, I was on the city side looking at this project, and it looked at California, who had somewhat adopted what ICC was proposing. And yes, there were rumors ICC was coming about in New York State. So attempts were made, and certain things were done per the H, categories, things like that. But at that time, the spaces were regulated per fire area. And even indeed, in current code, H1 through 4, you only have to sprinkler the fire area that H is located in, defined by fire barriers. It's interesting, H5 doesn't follow that same concept, and it has to be in a fully sprinklered building. And as you point out, Phillips Duffield, lowest common denominator, Phillips is not fully sprinklered. So we're in a jam, where previously we were an existing legally non-conforming condition. Once we have the retroactive requirements of Chapter 27, we're in a bind. And indeed, like I said, there's a future project in development right now, just at schematic design. So there are no floor plans that we can present to you or finalize for you, but the intent is to allow the maximum number of control areas and maximum allowable quantity of chemicals in Phillips eventually for a sprinklered building, but not until we get a sprinklered building. So what we would be following is the Chapter 38 higher education regulations for an unsprinkled building in Phillips as far as control areas and chemical use until such time that it is sprinklered. But it is our hope that in Duffield, creating that separate building, we can regulate the control areas and chemical quantities as per a sprinklered building in Duffield. I know that doesn't quite answer what we're going to do, but we don't even know.
Fair enough. You know, the challenge, of course, is that this board is being tasked with granting something that's the most hazardous use you can have in a building.
Correct. And indeed, we're looking for the maximum number of control areas for Phillips. I'm being quite honest.
You should use the code to the best
Yeah.
of your ability. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, while we're here, that the provision of the code that you're seeking relief from also obligates you to comply with the requirements for building height area stories.
That's correct.
And as a type 2B, you don't make it.
But we would if we were separate.
You don't get a variance and then say, well, that fixes all those things. Without understanding what it is that we're granting relief from. So what the boards have done in the past is if you're also seeking relief from some of those other provisions, because H5 is H5, then we would offer you the opportunity to amend your petition to also ask for relief from the provisions of 504 or 506 accordingly. And in doing so, we would ask the petitioner to prepare height and area analysis or companion analysis. And, one of the other things I'd like to point out is you've got these stage occupancies in here. Common path of travel at H is 25 feet. There's not enough definition in the conceptual level drawings that we presented for us to do that. And we shouldn't have to do that anyhow, but, an exit analysis, which is one of the things that I think the fire official was looking for, would be one of the things that we would ask for. So are you proposing to modify those spaces, or are you also seeking relief from those provisions?
We are currently fully compliant with the H travel distances, common path of travel, dead ends, and so on.
Have you done an analysis that?
Oh, yes.
With the board?
Unfortunately, I don't have that analysis with us, but basically, and I apologize, what you're asking is to prove that the building complies with all the other applicable provisions of the code. And I could bring my code books up. Basically, I would have to go through the entire code book and present to you that case. But indeed, the only areas that we're seeking for relief from is just the separation of the buildings. We fully comply in both Duffield standalone without counting on Phillips in terms of travel distance to exits, dead ends, common path of travel, and the same for all conditions in Phillips as well. My stair towers meet the separation for stair towers. I have the standpipes as required. There's all kinds of code provisions that apply to Phillips that we are in compliance. And indeed, an inspection was done and we were cited for those areas where compliance was questioned.
So I guess the outcome is that when you may comply with several things, you do not comply with
Correct.
several other things. You know, and again, I'm certainly not finding fault. This is a very complex case. I don't want to seem to be negative towards your application at all, but there are a number of issues here that the board has to consider.
Yes, and indeed, we're answering all of those, and some of those, we will show that we are actually in compliance. They were questioned, and we have to respond indeed. And we work closely with the City of Ithaca Building Division and Fire Department. And indeed, we are in the process of responding to those sites, absolutely. And that's why, you know, in all honesty, we included that as one of the actions in the variance, even though initially we had prepared the variance and we did not have that notice of violation. But as soon as we got it, we included it as part of our variance application to make you aware of that. So, you know, we are responding. We have compliance plans on a number of those things that we've already discussed with the fire department, and other things we are showing that we are actually in compliance by providing information.
And those that might not comply with today, those other modifications or improvements would become part of the project that's currently in development.
Absolutely. And furthermore, whether or not that project happens, we will be addressing those issues.
Yeah, they can hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. But even right off the bat, we put in the variance that we would be addressing the retroactive requirements of Chapter 27, you know, the H5 requirements. So even before the notice of violation came out, we were aware that we needed to comply. And, you know, we've been talking with the city, both fire department and building division, for a period of time on this variance, because we wanted their support, you know, and indeed that was one of the items that came up, and one of the, you know, the assurance that we provided them. You know, they also wanted to want us to do a propagation study for communication in the building, because part of it is underground, and, you know, with this low E glass and so on, you know, and indeed we're going to do it even when we do the renovations to Phillips, not just for now, to make sure that we are fulfilling their needs. So we are trying to work with them to make sure that we have a good, safe building that they can respond to properly.
So lastly, what is the, you mentioned that you will perform certain improvements to 2027. Is there a reason why the college can't get to put into place immediately path to compliance, and that it be done as soon as it's practical to do?
Absolutely. But our drop dead date has been set for 2027. And okay, could we do some sprinklering right now? Yes, but that sprinkling would end up being removed, you know, so it's basically throwing money away. However, for example, the emergency control station, indeed, we're going to have that in place prior to 2027. We're going to bring in a consultant to evaluate exactly what we have in the H5. We do have a response point in the building where we're doing an analysis to make sure that we meet all the requirements. I mean, we could have answered it as, yeah, we have chemical detection. Yes, we have a point that it responds to within the building. We're good. No, we voluntarily are looking further into this to make sure that it is as needed for the fire department, you know, rather than just, you know, doing a checkbox here. So it sounds like we may not be, but we are actually taking a very proactive process and trying to get to various items as quickly as possible. And a lot of things may be actually acceptable. We're going to bring in a consultant to analyze to what degree they are acceptable. And my understanding is we're going to try to have that consultant on board within 60 days. which obviously it's way before 2027. Yeah. And indeed, of course, the new work will address code compliance. And, you know, honestly, we have Cornell standards that literally go above the building code requirements that we will be fulfilling with this. For example, the chemical transport path, it's really interesting. The retroactive requirements in chapter 27, the one thing they give forgiveness to is the chemical transport path, and they allow it down a public corridor. And we don't need forgiveness for that because we have a dedicated path that doesn't, interface with a public corridor anyplace. So we actually have some things in place over and above even the requirements of the current chapter 27. However, we want to make sure that we are in compliance. Should something go wrong and Cornell is found that, we have a big stake in this, obviously. We certainly don't want to be on the CBS News for something going wrong. And it's not the only reason.
Yeah. Can I Thomas K. Cornell University. So one of the things is a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. If we want to embark on giving more detail about what we need to be in compliance with, what we're not in compliance with, we want to do that looking at the building as fully sprinklered, because two would be in completely different results. Some of the things we're not even allowed to have in a building that's not fully sprinklered. So to be able to develop more detailed analysis of what we're maybe not compliant with in chapter 27, we want to do that with a consultant looking at the building as fully sprinklered. So that's why we're here today, to hopefully be able to do that. And then when we do that analysis, we're looking at it as fully sprinklered and separated from Phillips. And now here's all the things we need to do. And then we can work with the city on that detailed list to implement those. And those will happen sooner than the 2027 date for Phillips. That, like Mike said, we are committed to that date regardless if this other project moves forward or not, but we think it's more fiscally prudent to say, hey, we'll do that as part of that bigger project because we're likely going to gut many of these floors. The building is about 35% sprinklered now. If we do projects that are alteration level 2 from between that and now, we'll sprinkler those areas as we have been doing in the building. So it just seems like it would be the whole layout of the floor could change. And so it'll take us a couple of years to even do a project now. So you look at that timeline, it's like, well, we're close to demoing the building anyway. So that's why we put that date out there. And that would seem like a reasonable date working with the city. So we're committed to that either way. And the other mitigations have different timelines. They're not all 2027. So there's different dates, the things we can do, we're going to do more quickly.
Later than 2020?
No, that's the latest. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And to be very clear, Mike Nikodovich again, the H5 is located in Duffield. There is no H5 in Phillips. And we wouldn't even consider doing an H5 in Phillips until after that 27 date, when it would be fully sprinkled, because we have to treat Phillips as an unsprinkled building up until that point. So it is the H5, production facility or research facility, whatever you want to call it. But the H5 is totally in Duffield Hall. And again, when it was built, we could regulate it per fire area. Now, definitions have changed in the code where I have to look at the entire building. And for an H5, it says it has to be in a sprinkled building. That's throughout. That's why we have this problem. Honestly, if we don't get the variance, we're in big trouble. We can't even have the H5. I'm sorry.
So Daniel Woody, Safety Manager and Facility Engineer for Cornell College of Engineering. Ward Center, last name is spelled W-O-O-D-I-E. So Daniel Woody. Address is Ward Center, Ithaca, New York, 14850. So I've been involved in the safety of the facility since its construction. And as Mike kind of highlighted, without this variance, we come into issues with the control areas. So specifically, Duffield was designed above the code of the day when it was built under the Uniform Code. And goal was to provide the safety infrastructure for the type of research done in an H5 area.
Right now, we're dealing with a situation where if we do not get this variance, we begin to have to defer research labs for new faculty coming in to other buildings because we cannot meet the MAQs, and then we're deferring them to buildings that are older and not built to the standard that Duffield was. So from a safety perspective, it's important to me because we have the toxic gas monitoring system, we have the other safety devices built into Duffield Hall, and we're trying to be able to put the research that needs those safety devices in that facility versus deferring them to other buildings where it's going to be less safe. And that's, again, one of the drivers for this. Also answer any questions about the safety systems if there are any of those.
This is Tom Stewart, Department of State clarification. Duffield Hall and Manor Hall, both built underneath the Green Book between 1984 and 1990. So that's where these things were. There wasn't an H5 at the time when it was designed. So.
Any questions?
Did we address you had mentioned though, the height and area analysis? I mean, we have done that based on the H2, H4, H5. The mechanical penthouse under today's code would not count as a story. So we've called it a 4-story building because that's what the C of O calls it today. It would not count as a story if we were looking at it under today's code. And I think that would have tripped us up on the H2 in particular, perhaps. There's either 3 stories, I think is what you're limited to for H2. So we have done that, and we did not see that we would be non-compliant under today's code based on any of these uses with type 1 construction. And I realize that, you know, if we're looking at it based on what it is today is type 2, the variance to separate it would allow us to call it type 1, and then those compliance issues that you noted would be moot at that point. So it's a bit of that chicken and egg sort of scenario, but whatever you know might be required, hopefully with that testimony, it clarifies that. I would hate to have to go back and do an amendment to this application based on that.
Sorry for interjecting all this time. Even under the 2003 code, it allowed an addition to be built onto a building that exceeded the construction type and height and area limitations if you put up a 2-hour barrier. It wasn't until 2007 that we had to look at the entire building. That's why this existing legal non-conforming use, because it was built as an addition. And then when we start adding Phillips now under current code, we have to call it 2B. But actually, it was built in compliance, obviously with the Green Book, as Tom said, but even in the initial provisions of the ICC. It was the changes in code as the code evolved that effectively made this a non-compliant building. But initially, it was a legally non-conforming building. Now we're getting to the point with the retroactive requirements that we're no longer legally non-conforming.
Thank you. This was the
This atrium, is it completely separated on all walls or only part way down?
It's completely separated from Phillips and Upson and the multi-story portion of Duffield, yes.
So this 2-hour wall just wasn't drawn all the way around.
This is exterior. This is exterior. So here, all of this is wherever we have any common walls, it is separated, including.
Speaking right now? Is that Mr. King? Sir.
Describe that northeast, southwest, so that.
Certainly. North is at top. And this is going to the exterior. All this goes to this exterior. This is to the exterior. So the separation is continuous all the way where we have common Duffield on this side, on the east side, Phillips on the west side, Upson on the south side. And indeed, we have continuous separation at Upson. We don't have, obviously, separation at the exterior walls. We have continuous separation at all levels of Phillips and on all of the levels common with the atrium on the Duffield side. And furthermore, as Chris pointed out, on the Duffield side, we have an additional 1 hour corridor, public corridor on that side that separates the research space from the atrium as well. So effectively, on the Duffield side, we have a 1 hour and 2 hour. On the Phillips side, we have a 2 hour. And on the Upson side, we have the continuous separation as well. And Upson years ago, I don't know why Cornell didn't do this at that time, was granted a variance to be a separate building because it was common with this, and we should have done all of it back then, but I wasn't with Cornell then.
Thank you.
Any other questions here?
Yeah, I guess just my thought I had. We're talking, essentially you're asking that from a code perspective, we consider Duffield Hall as a completely separate building and that it should be regulated as its own building, knowing that we do have separation, we are connected.
Correct.
But we're also being asked to give that without exactly knowing what's going to happen at Phillips. And so we know that there's commitments locally to Phillips that there's going to be full sprinkling and that. But what happens 10, 15 years, a change of occupancy wants to occur, that if this variance is granted and we get a change of occupancy and there's some other kind of can't regulate the future. We don't know exactly what could be cooked up and what could show up in one of these code books. But from my perspective, it's a trick. I don't want to use the word game, but it's a tricky game we play where we're gonna let it be a duck, but really it's a goose because we know we've got separations. We've got 2 hour separations and that. But for me, the Phillips is a question mark. We know we have commitments for sprinkler, we have things like that, but is that going to turn into an H5? And now, granted, we have some separations, but what? Because then we also, you were granted a variance for Upson years ago. I think it was at 2015, one was given. So now we have three buildings that are one building, but we're calling them 3 buildings,
Right.
essentially.
Right. And what I would say is that if we had not built Duffield, Phillips would be regulated separately. Upson would have been regulated separately. And admittedly, we followed the code of the time, which allowed this addition. If we could have seen into the future, it's structurally independent. At that time, it wouldn't have been that hard to put in a firewall. And if that firewall was there, indeed, we could do anything that's code compliant in Phillips, which effectively what we're asking the board is the firewall could have been 1 2 hour wall. We have 2 2 hour fire barriers and structural independence. But the problem is that if Phillips collapsed, it would take its fire barrier with it. The Duffield and the atrium would remain standing. If Duffield collapsed, along with the atrium, the 2 hour separation at Phillips stays. So Phillips, to your point, functions as a separate building, even if Duffield were to fail, which obviously in the future, if we do anything, it has to be code compliant. So yes, we will make sure that city and everyone else will also make sure that we're code compliant. And really the issue is more that we're asking for forgiveness that if Duffield collapses, if Phillips collapses, the fire barrier separation won't be at the interface of Phillips and the atrium. It will be set back at Duffield with the atrium exposed. And basically the only occupied portion of that atrium is the grade level, which 2 hour separation, there's not going to be anybody in there. Right now they're treated all as separate fire areas. That's the way it was originally built. So really the deficiency here is not really to the Phillips side. It's actually if Phillips collapsed, and problem. The fire barrier now is stepped back rather than at the face of Phillips.
That's the rationale, or part of the rationale behind some of the commitments that we've put in as mitigations, where Cornell is agreeing, like the atrium is always going to be a ground level public space. It's never going to become research space. They're never going to infill the upper floors and bring that hazard closer to Phillips.
And we're willing to make that a condition. Any questions?
Chairman, this is Tom Tuitt, Department of State Marine. One of the emails we received earlier this morning was from Ms. Haynes Sharp, the Fire Marshal for the City of Ithaca Fire Department. And her comments and concerns were that the MAQ analysis to comply with the Fire Department, New York State Fire Code, Chapter 38, and that on-site emergency response team comply with Fire Code, New York State Section 403.7, on-site emergency control center to comply with Fire Code, New York State, Chapter 27, and plan for emergency drills to comply with Fire Code for New York State, Chapter 403.7, and detailed emergency procedures comply with Fire Code 403.7. Sprinkling of existing H spaces that are retroactively required to be sprinkled, such as ductwork. They would like to see this happen in a timely manner, preferably within 6 to 9 months. Anything else to add?
Yeah, hi, this is Jill Haynes Sharp again. I don't know if I gave my address before, but it's 310 West Green Street in Ithaca, New York. One thing I would like to add to what Tom just said is that we did have a call at Duffield last week, I believe, or the week before, for a toxic gas detection. Basically, something detected toxic gas. So normally, when that occurs, Dan Woody, the safety person, is notified by Barton Hall, which is the Cornell Dispatch Center. And in this particular case, he wasn't notified and indeed was not aware of the call until our assistant chief phoned him, I believe. So that's really the reason why we need an on-site response team and we need detailed emergency procedures for these types of calls, because we don't have the expertise on these chemicals, and Cornell's response crew did not either. So we're looking for people who would be on site with the expertise, such as Dan, but Dan can't be there all the time. And those people would meet us and liaise with us so that we would have a good idea of how to handle a call.
So this is Daniel Woody. I can comment on the event that happened at the occurrence. So twice a year, we do maintenance on our toxic gas system. There are consumable parts that require replacement every couple of years. We had replaced some parts the previous week. And this is actually the second time that a consumable part had shown an error where it had immediately spiked to a high level and then immediately back down to zero again. It did not show any kind of natural response to an actual event, and therefore we believe it was a fault in the detector. So within approximately 5 minutes of the call and on the phone with Assistant Chief Farrell, who was present at the time, I think he was on-scene commander, or at least one of the response team, I was able to log in remotely to the toxic gas system, determine it was a erroneous event, a spurious event from the detector. I was able to confirm that the gas levels were zero. They were able to confirm that the space, had evacuated, had alarmed. We were confirmed that it was a non-issue, and they were able to reset the systems and bring the place back into occupancy. We're investigating what happened with that. In terms of our standard response is that I am notified that the local Cornell emergency responders show up on scene. They usually contact me, or I'm already logging into the system remotely from either at home or in my office, or I'm showing up on scene as they arrive through that notification system. So we're just continuing to investigate that. We believe it's an IT issue that we're going to chase down and correct. But in any case, I was able to respond in a fairly quick and efficient manner to the event. We believe that IFD got involved because of some new personnel within the Cornell Dispatch Center that were not aware of the agreed upon protocols for gas events with the City of Ithaca and the city fire officials.
Are those protocols documented? Do we have a written procedure at Cornell?
We do. I don't have it here with me to share with you, but I do know that group has that as a documentation as part of their process.
From looking at the violations that Jillian has presented. Some of the scenes made it. I regulate a hydroelectric dam for one of my jobs. Constantly having to deal with the FERC and documentation is always their try. That's their job, is documentation. And when stuff goes wrong, we have to reconstruct what happened. We have to know what was supposed to happen and if those things are good. And so a number of her comments, violations appear to be that the documentation she saw isn't at the ready, isn't at the hand. And asking for plans and diagrams for each 5 areas, asking for quarterly drills and documentation of the drills are occurring, describing response team, how coverage is maintained when they're occupied. Some of these things even get knowing apparently what's inventory. Can you explain when she came to do this inspection, what happened? Why weren't these documents at the ready, or what is the status of the documents?
I wasn't present during this inspection, so I'm aware of the notification, but there was, I don't know, Joe, was this part of the yearly fire inspection with OFPC, or is this something separate you did as part of our meetings?
It was actually less part of the annual inspection and more after I realized afterwards that we had some deficiencies.
Okay.
But we are looking to get those documents. That's what we'd like to see them created if they're not existing.
Yep. So we've been in discussion with both Code Enforcement Division of the City of Ithaca as well as the IFD with regards to this variance application. And from my understanding, a lot of these concerns came up as we had further discussions of finding compliance with the H5 areas. And, once we move forward from the variance, being able to show that we're in compliance with these retroactive fire requirements. In terms of the chemical inventory and understanding what we have, we've been pursuing a chemical inventory for the whole college, including Duffield Hall, for the past 4 or 5 years. We've hired staff to do that. We've got an online system that HNS pays for. We've set up workstations and have trained the researchers on how to maintain that inventory. We have been working to gather the MAQ. We're going to be able to provide that to them probably in the next week. So that is all information that we have. It just might not have been available at the ready when they came, and working to gather that in a consolidated form to give it to them in an organized manner.
Jillian, you affirm those statements that they're working with you to get that information?
Yes, absolutely. And we do appreciate the working relationship that we have.
We regularly brought IFD in to do tours and training on our safety systems within Duffield Hall. Last time we did that, I believe, was about 1.5 years ago. And we're in discussions about, as part of this Chapter 7, or the H5 compliance. I don't know the chapter numbers as well as Mike, but as part of the H5 compliance, making that sort of a regularly yearly kind of process to bring them in, educate them on that, where our response center is, where this documentation is, to make sure that that's ready and available to them. I'm also working with the response team that's internal to Cornell, colloquially referred to as a 248 group based on the call sign of the vehicle they use, and doing sort of potentially a quarterly training with them. So we've done regular training with them, but we've talked about beefing that up and improving that so that it's more regular, stays fresh in their mind.
Yeah, you're aware of the fact that as soon as you start to store or use hazardous materials anywhere on campus, you're obligated to complete a Form 209U and furnish the fire department with that and update that as quantities of materials change.
That is not information I am personally aware of. I would expect that would be with our central HNS organization. So
this is a law that's almost 50 years old.
Okay, then I will definitely, we'll go back and work with our HNS organization to ensure that we have that information that is filed. If it has not already, I can't speak to that in any manner.
Explain that a little bit, our EHS and the chemical safety officer that we have.
Okay, yeah, certainly. So Cornell has an HNS organization.
Environmental health and safety.
Yeah, I'm sorry, environmental health and safety organization of approximately probably 30 or more individuals. So they sit as an organization to monitor safety for the entire campus, as regulatory and fire code compliance and so forth. We have University Fire Marshal Ron Flynn, and we also have a chemical hygiene officer, certified chemical hygiene officer that provides that safety function for the entire campus. And there's a chemical hygiene plan that covers Duffield Hall, but it covers sort of all of Cornell University.
And that's information that we've provided as part of the initial notice of violation to the city of Ithaca. Sort of, these are the overriding documents and plans we have for the campus in addition to the building specific information. So I'd have to go back to that group and say, has this been filed? That's the question that I can't answer from that perspective, not being part of that organization. I work and reside in Port Time Kings, Director of Facilities, and I'm more of a local individual. So it's a role they put in about 11 years ago to provide that more immediate local knowledge and expertise for the safety systems of a complex building like Duffield Hall.
I do have a question as it relates to the feasibility of bringing Phillips Hall into type 1B building. It was mentioned in testimony and in the exhibits that a small portion of the building, the steel framing, is unprotected. Have you looked into the feasibility of actually bringing that portion of the building up to the protection?
Indeed, you're absolutely correct. It is only a small portion of the auditorium roof, and that's not even multi-level there, that is unprotected steel. Tom, would that be a feasible thing as part of our renovation project to Phillips to protect that?
As part of the project?
Yes.
Also, that room itself is sprinkled.
So at least we have that level of protection, but indeed, I think we could bring that back and where it's schematic design. So if that became a requirement of the variance, we certainly would follow up.
Well, that's why I asked that as a potential condition for a variance if we felt we needed further mitigation.
Yeah.
I am a little bit.
We would certainly be willing to do that as a condition of the variance.
I am concerned a little bit about sort of the blank slate, so to speak, that we have when we do allow a variance as the atrium to act as a firewall, specifically with Phillips Hall. It was mentioned in testimony that schematic designs are underway, that there's plans for an addition to that building. I am concerned, in a way, allowing this as a firewall turns the dial back, and it gives you the ability to turn the dial back up with the project with additions and expanding the building area. So I just, not knowing what that looks like, even at a preliminary level, I think is challenging, because ultimately an addition will, even though we may look at those fire barriers as separating and acting as a firewall here, it is still connected, all connected with firewalls, fire barriers.
Correct.
So
You're correct.
I guess I'm sort of seeking more information away on what the plans, even at a schematic level, are for Phillips. And also, I understand that the violations, we've talked about the violations, and I understand that they're fairly recent. Cornell hasn't had an opportunity to formally respond to those or put together the documentation to respond.
But we certainly will.
I think that those exhibits would be very helpful for us to formulate, further deliberate. So I think my position currently is that there's some more information that would be helpful to further discuss.
Is there anything that we could provide to you now in terms of, or you want it in more detail?
I really think, I don't think we could probably achieve that. I think we can put together a list of what we'd be asking for to see, and a lot of it would pertain to responses and documents asked for, and notice of violations. I think Mark made a good point about I understand you've said in testimony that the building, all the egress currently that exists complies with the building code. I think it would be helpful to see that. Even if it complies, it is good to see what the makeup of the egress looks like.
Chris, don't we have enough floor plans right now to show the board our egress?
The direction Mr. Garlock is going is the direction I would concur with. We've started the conversation and I would lean towards the table to be able to have some more dialogue. To
Okay,
be able to, because I am interested in working with Jillian and hearing, seeing those things come together. Just because we have the opportunity to see how this relationship is going to work. And it lets us observe the relationship between the fire department, between the college, because once, you know, if you're granted this, the risk level goes up. And if, you know, impromptu inspection, she couldn't get her hands on things, we'll process and procedures we're putting in place to change that, to make sure that that information is at the ready and that you guys are ready to continue to be responsible managers of those risks.
okay,
We're not implying that we don't think you're responsible, but our job is to trust and verify.
understood.
So
Understood.
my thought is that you guys have provided a ton of information to digest, and then maybe we get Jillian's stuff.
And indeed, please be clear, the notice of violation was our notice and request for that information. So, you know, as Jillian said, they had done the inspection earlier in the year. After further thought, it was determined that through this notice violation, a request should go for this information. So I don't believe that that was asked for during the inspection. Jillian, could
That
you-
is correct. That is correct, Mike.
Right.
Okay.
So this is the first we heard, and we are in the process of responding, certainly. And I understand tabling it, but I just wanted to reassure the board that it wasn't, it was asked for back in January and, you know, we've just ignored it and that's why we got the notice. No.
I appreciate your forthrightness and the contributions that Cornell has made in the area of research on all sorts of layers and levels. And I
Thank you.
don't think there's anyone in New York State that wants to see that change.
Yeah.
But we bear the responsibility
Right.
of making sure, because if something goes wrong and it's found to be, you know.
And as you know, there is an incentive for doing semiconductors within the United States, and obviously Cornell is going to be on the forefront of that. So, yeah, you know, to say that we're not going to develop in that direction, I couldn't say that. I think it's going to, you know, a lot of these institutions are going to go more in that direction.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we table this matter to permit the applicant to provide A, a response to the notice of violations, B, a graphic and narrative description of the nature and extent of the proposed work, so that the board can have a better understanding of the impact of the various variances that we're being asked to grant.
Okay, I have a motion to table.
Could it, any other information that you may need?
Vote on this, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a motion to table. Second.
I will second.
You will call the board, Ms. Wista.
Aye.
Mr. Habermill.
Aye.
Person. Chair votes aye, 4 ayes, no nays. Petitions adjourned, table.
Any other information you may need?
To work with Mr. DiTullio, we have a lot of notes here, and we've spent considerable time going through the materials you presented, which were very well done. I think there's just maybe a kind of a fundamental gap, and then getting the notice of violation at the 11th hour, you know, gave us a little more pause.
Yep.
Which I think.
Understood.
But I think you work with Mr. DiTullio to get that.
And what we'll do, Mr. DiTullio, is we'll generate a list of items that they wish to have additional information on. And I'll forward that to you.
Yeah, let me know.
Team, and we can set you up for July hearing.
Perfect.
Which will be July 20th, I do believe. And with that in mind, we can take whatever information that the board needs and requires and would like to see, give you ample opportunity to gather it and provide it to us. And that way, we can also converse with the fire department and also the building code with Jill here and make sure that we get everything that we need from her and that's what she'd like to see and any kind of input we have from local authorities have jurisdiction. So that way, again, as Mr. Hindelayer said, we can follow up on cooperative nature and methods that the fire
Absolutely.
department at Cornell University has on the different parts of it.
Yep.
And well documented.
Oh, thank you.
And worst comes to worst, going forward, because we do hybrid here, Mr. Burton can't physically be here, he can be here remotely.
Okay,
Like, because we will have the same board members.
excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. George. We will officially is the last hearing, so we will go.
Thank you for your time. I know that was long. Thank you.
So next question, does anybody have an update on the US Open scores?
No, I was busy at a hearing.
My phone's blowing up in my pocket. Maybe
Maureen.
it's about that. Yeah.
Did you say the hearing is over, Mr. Garlock?
Yes, the hearing's over and we're off the record. So we don't
Okay,
need
we're
comments
off the
about the US Open.